Okay, so I'm just going to go through this review assignment. I'm just going to kind of explain it as I create the answer key. So apologies if there's a mistake that slips in here, but I will do my best. So for question number 1, match the equation with its solution, and then one of those doesn't have a solution over there to the right. So I'm just going to kind of explain how I thought about these problems, but how you thought about them might be a little bit different. So if I look at the first one, 3x plus 1 equals 31. Now, I know in order to make this work, in order to get 31, the 3x has got to be equal to, not 10, sorry, the 3x has got to be equal to 30, because 30 plus 1 is 31. So then I'm thinking, all right, what number do I plug in for x so that 3 times x is equal to 30? And that would be 10. So for that first one, my answer would be, my solution would be 10. So I could go down here, I'll just gotta put a line to that. All right, second problem, x divided by 2 is equal to 14. And so here I'm just asking myself, all right, what number could I input for x so that when I divide it by 2, I get 14? Well, it has to be twice as big as 14, okay, which is gonna be 28, because then when I divide it by 2 or cut it in half, that will get me to 14. And if I look at that list, I don't see 28 in my list. And so I think what that means is my last one is the x is equal to 28. That's the one that's not given to us. Okay, I tried to trick some people by I put the x equals 7 in here. Some people, I was thinking maybe you might think like 14 divided by 2, but it's x that's being divided by 2. So it's not going to be 7. All right, the third one. What number to the 4th power is equal to 16? Remember, x to the 4th doesn't mean 4 times x. It means x times x times x times x. And so when you think what number, when you multiply it by itself 4 times, gives you 16, that is going to be 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, and times 1 more 2 is 16. All right, so the next one, 12 is equal to 1/4 8 times x. So it's like you're taking a quarter of some number, and that gets us to 12. So that number has to be 4 times bigger than 12. And what number is 4 times bigger than 12? It is 48. So 1/4 of 48 is equal to 12. And then the last one, remember, this means 3 times everything that is inside the parentheses. And so 3 times what is 9? Well, 3 times 3 is 9. So that means everything inside of the parentheses has to be equal to 3. So 2 times something plus 1 is has to be equal to 3. So that means this 2 times x, that needs to equal to 2, which then tells us that x has to equal to 1, which is the first choice. So that's question number 1. C is not used, D is not used, F is not used. Question number 2. Write down 3 expressions that are equivalent to 2 times 6x plus 4. Well, the first one, I'm just going to use the distributive property. And so if I have 2 groups of 6x, that gives me 12x's. And if I have 2 groups of 4, that is going to give me 8. So using the distributive property, 1 is 12x plus 8. The other one, I mean, really, there's one of these answers may vary. Like you could come up with a lot. I would say, here's a couple more examples. I could change this to 2, and instead of 6x plus 4 in there, I could have gone just broken the 6x up into 3x plus 4. So that would work. I could also look, and instead of putting the 2 on the outside of the parentheses, I could have put a 4. And then think like, okay, 4 times what would give me this 12x? Well, 4 times 3x gives me 12x. And 4 times what gives me 8? 2. So that would also work. And of course, there's a ton of other ones, but those are just a few different examples. Question number 3, write down 3 expressions that are equivalent to 24t plus 12. Same thing, there's really a ton different answers. You know, I could just break the 24t up into 10t plus 14t plus 12. That would be equivalent. I could break up the 12, so I could leave the 24t alone and break this into 10 plus 2. I could also use the distributive property in reverse. I see that 24 and 12 both have they have a lot of common factors, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the common factor of 12. So if I do that, then I have to think 12 times what gives me 24t? 12 times 2t does. And 12 times what gives me 12? 1. So that would work. I mean, other answers that you could have come up with, like reversing the distributive property, I could have done 2 times 12t plus 6. I could have done 3 times 8t plus 4. I could have done 4 times 6t plus 3. All of these are equivalent. Let's one more there. I could have pulled out a 6, and that would have given me 4t plus 2. So all of those would work. All right, question number 4. What do each of the following expressions equal? I'm going to write it out. Well, most of them I'm going to write out just to emphasize this. 2 to the third means 2 times 2 times 2, which is equal to 8, not 6. We're not doing 2 times 3. B, 5 squared is 5 times 5, which is 25. C, 4 to the fourth means 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. When I get some of these, I like to break them down. Like the first 4 times 4, I would think of this, and then the second 4 times 4. Think of this as like 16 times 16, which is 256. But you can kind of break those down and order them however you want. The last one, 1 to the 100th power, well, that means 1 times 1 times 1. Now, I'm not going to write this out 100 times, but that's what that is saying. But if you just keep multiplying by 1, then my answer is going to be 1. It could be 1 to the millionth power, and I'm still just going to get 1. Question 5, write in words 2 ways to say that. So one way would be to say 2 to the third power. And then anytime you're to the third power, you can also abbreviate that by just saying 2 cubed. Either one of those is fine. Similarly, on the next one, question 6, this would be 5 to the second power. Or you could say 5 squared. Both of those would work. Write down 3 perfect squares. Now remember, a perfect square, where a perfect square comes from, you can think of this visually, or you can think of this like more numerically. If I take a number and square it, like 1 squared, that gives me 1. 2 squared, that gives me 4. 3 squared, that gives me 9. All of these numbers that I'm creating are perfect squares. And, you know, I could keep on going. Okay, so some of those perfect squares are, I could just say 1, 4, 9. And the next one would be 16 and 25 and so on. You could also think about it as more geometrically. So you could think of these numbers as like the areas. And so if you think of like 9 is the area of a square, what would the side lengths of that square be? Well, it would be 3 and 3. So a perfect square is when you have a square that, like, if that's the area, the side lengths are going to be whole numbers. So that's another way to think about it more visually. Question 8, write down 3 perfect cubes. Kind of similarly to perfect squares, you could get these by just doing 1 cubed, which is 1. So that would be one of mine. The next one, 2 cubed, is 8. That would be the next one. 3 cubed, which is 27. And so that goes on and so forth. You could also think about this geometrically. 27, if you think of this as a cube and say, oh, the volume is 27, what are the side lengths? And we haven't done a lot with the volume this year, but to find the volume, you would do length times width times height, 3 times 3 times 3. So perfect cubes are when the volume means that the side lengths have to be whole numbers as well. Okay, so kind of similar to the perfect squares, where the areas mean that the side lengths have to be perfect whole numbers as well. Okay, so that's another way to think about those. Question 9, in the algebraic expression 5 plus 9x, the 9 is called a coefficient. Question 10, select all the expressions that have the same value as 10 squared. Well, 10 squared means 10 times 10, which is equal to 100. So I'm looking for all of the ones that equal 100. Well, not that. 2 to the 10th does not. Well, there we go. There is 100. D Well, this would mean 10 times, we have 10 groups of 7 plus 3, and 7 plus 3 is actually equal to 10. So 10 groups of 10 gives me 100, so that would also work. 25 to the 4th power does not work. Remember, that doesn't mean 25 times 4. It means 25 times 25 times 25 times 25. The last one, 2 squared times 5 squared. Well, 2 squared, let's just break this down. That's 2 times 2. 5 squared is 5 times 5. 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 5 is 25. 4 times 25 does equal 100. So F would also work. All right, the last one for the short responses, 11. For each tape diagram, write an equation that would be equivalent to the picture shown, then find the solutions. Okay, so for the first one, the equation would be 5 plus 2x is equal to 19. The solution on this one, you can kind of, I'll use the actual diagram to help us out. If I know this is 5, if I took away this 5, this would leave me with 14 here. And so the two x's would have to equal 14. So that means the x's are equal to 7. The next problem would be 2 plus, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 x's is equal to 19. And similarly, if I took away the 2 from the tape diagram, that would turn this into a 17. So the 5 x's have to equal 17. So what would one of the x's equal? Well, I would take 17 and divide it by 5. And you could just leave your answer as 17/5. Or, you know, if you wanted to, you could say that's 3 2/5. Or if you put it in your calculator, you could go ahead and get 3.4. Those are all totally fine, but honestly, I think 17/5 is probably the easiest. It's the fewest number of steps. The next question, I have 2 groups of x plus 5, and those have to equal 19. So that would be my equation. 2 groups of x plus 5 is equal to 19. And if you think about this, if I took away one of the groups, that's taking away half of my 19. So that would leave me with what, 10, 9.5 would be one of the groups. And what number plus 5 is 9.5? It's 4.5. So that's what x would have to equal. Last one, we have 5 groups of x plus 2. So 5 times x plus 2 is equal to 19. Similarly, if I took 4 of those away. So I'm basically taking this and I'm dividing it into 5 groups. So I'm taking that 19 and I have to break that up and divide it into 5 groups if I wanted to find just one of those. So 1x plus 2 is going to have to equal whatever 19 is divided by 5. This one's a little trickier. So let me work it out a little bit. X plus 2. 19 over 5 is the same as 3 4/5. So then you can say, okay, what plus 2 gives me 3 4/5? And that is going to be 1 4/5. 1 4/5 plus 2 is 3 4/5. So that's my answer to question 11. I will do the long response in the next video.